David and Victoria had been married for years now. They had a beautiful daughter named Sophia. Sophia was a bright and curious child, but her parents were always busy with work and business. They would often leave Sophia with her nanny, who took care of her and made sure she got to school on time. But one day, the nanny got an admission to a university and had to leave. Sophia was left alone, and her parents didn't seem to care. They would often ask her to go to school alone, without even taking her there themselves. Sophia would have to wake up early, get dressed, and head to school all by herself. When she came back home, there would be no one to greet her. Her parents would be busy with their work, and Sophia would have to fend for herself. She would often feel lonely and unloved, wondering why her parents didn't seem to care about her. As time went on, Sophia began to feel like she was growing up too fast. She was only a child, but she was being forced to be independent and self-sufficient. She longed for the love and attention of her parents, but it seemed like they were too busy to care. Sophia sat alone in her bedroom, tears streaming down her face. She was talking to herself, trying to make sense of her situation. "I'm only 12 years old," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I'm in primary 1, and my mates' parents take them to school and pick them up. But I'm living with my rich parents, and they don't even have time for me. All they care about is making money, but they don't even know what I want. What I want is for them to care for me, to spend time with me, to take me to school and pick me up. But they won't even do that for me." Sophia felt a surge of anger and frustration. She thought about how her parents had left her alone since her nanny had left. They had left her to fend for herself, to go to school and come back home on her own. Why can't they even pay for the school bus? Sophia asked herself. That way, I could follow the bus to school and come back home. But no, they're too busy making money to even think about my well-being. Sophia felt a sense of determination wash over her. She decided that she was going to confront her parents, to tell them how she felt. "I'm not going to let them ignore me anymore," Sophia said to herself. "I'm going to make them listen to me, to make them understand how I feel. I'm going to ask them to pay for the school bus, so I can stop going to school and coming back home alone." With a newfound sense of courage, Sophia wiped away her tears and stood up. She took a deep breath, determined to confront her parents and make them understand her needs. Sophia tried to talk to her parents the next morning, but they had already left for work before she woke up. She had no choice but to prepare for school and head out on her own. When she came back home in the afternoon, her parents were still not back. But when they finally arrived home at night, Sophia approached them and poured out her heart. "Mommy, Daddy, I want to talk to you about something," Sophia said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I want you to register me on the school bus. I'm scared to go to school and come back home on my own. All my classmates' parents bring them to school or they take the school bus. Why is it different for me?" But instead of listening to Sophia's concerns, her parents became angry and shouted at her. "You're 12 years old, Sophia," her mother said. "You're not a child anymore. You don't need a school bus to take you to school and bring you back home." Sophia felt disappointed and tears began to run down her cheeks. "But Mommy, I'm scared," she cried. "Something might happen to me. Please, can't you just register me on the school bus?" But her parents refused to listen. "We don't have the money for that," her father said. "We're using our money for something else." Sophia felt a surge of anger and frustration. "You always say you don't have money, but I know you do," she said. "You just don't want to spend it on me." Her parents became even angrier and shouted at her to get out of their room. Sophia felt hurt and alone, and she ran out of the room, shedding uncontrollable tears. Sophia ran to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. She threw herself onto her bed, crying uncontrollably. She felt like her heart was breaking into a million pieces. "Oh God, are these people really my parents?" Sophia sobbed, asking God the same question over and over again. "Why are they treating me like this? Are they really my parents? Or did they adopt me? I don't even understand why they're treating me like this." Sophia's body shook with sobs as she cried out to God for help. She felt so scared and alone, and she didn't know what to do. "Oh God, please just save me," Sophia prayed, her voice shaking with fear. "Do not allow anything to happen to me. Anytime I'm going to school and coming back, I feel so scared within myself, like something bad is going to happen. But God, please protect me. On my going and on my coming, do not allow anything to happen to me." Sophia's tears continued to flow as she thought about her parents' refusal to register her on a school bus. She knew they were capable of doing it, but they had chosen not to. "My stingy and careless parents have refused to buy me a school bus, which I know they are capable of doing," Sophia said, her voice filled with anger and sadness. "So God, always protect me. Do not allow anything to happen to me. I do not know the kind of parents that I have." As Sophia continued to cry and pray, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that God was with her, and that He would protect her from harm. But she couldn't help feeling sad and angry about the way her parents were treating her. David and Victoria were sitting in their living room, busy with their laptops. They were discussing their daughter, Sophia, and how they were raising her. "I'm telling you, Victoria, we're doing the right thing," David said, smiling. "We're giving Sophia a good training. She's learning to be independent and self-sufficient." "Yes, I agree with you," Victoria said, nodding. "We don't want her to be like those other big men's daughters who don't know how to do anything for themselves. We want her to be strong and capable." "Exactly," David said. "And that's why we're not pampering her. We're not using our money to spoil her. We want her to learn the value of hard work and self-reliance." "I know some people might think we're being harsh," Victoria said, "but we know what's best for Sophia. And we're confident that she'll thank us for this one day," David chuckled. "Yes, she'll be grateful to us for not spoiling her. We're doing this for her own good, even if she doesn't realize it now." Victoria smiled, nodding in agreement. "We're good parents, David. We're doing the right thing." But little did they know, their daughter Sophia was suffering in silence, feeling unloved and uncared for. She longed for her parents' attention and affection, but they were too busy with their work and laptops to notice her needs. Back in school, Sophia's friends and classmates would often laugh at her and ask her why she was suffering herself by trekking to school. "You come from a rich home, why can't your parents bring you to school or pick you up?" they would ask. Sophia was too ashamed to answer their questions. She would just tell them that her parents were too busy to bring her to school or pick her up. But her friends would press her further, asking her why her parents couldn't even register her on the school bus. "What about the school bus?" they would ask. "Why can't they register you on the school bus so that you can ride to school and back home safely?" Sophia would just shake her head and say that she is okay with the way things are. But Sophia was too afraid to speak out. She was afraid of what her parents might do to her if she complained about their treatment towards her. So she would just sit at the school gate, shedding tears and asking God why she had to suffer like that. "Why did you give me such parents, God?" she would ask, tears streaming down her face. "I'm just a child, I don't deserve to be treated like this. Please, God, just protect me from harm. Don't let anything bad happen to me." And with that, Sophia would stand up, wipe away her tears, and head home, wondering what the future held for her. Sophia would sometimes love to play and chat with her parents, but they were always too busy with their laptops. Whenever she approached them, they would tell her that they were busy with an online meeting or something like that. Sophia would feel bad, wondering why her parents couldn't spare some time for her. Ah, what type of thing is this? She would ask herself. I can't even play with my parents. They won't even try to give me attention or play with me. What type of life is this? She felt trapped in the big house, with no one to play with. The only time she got to go out was when she went to school, which was a chore in itself. It's so harmful for me, Sophia would say to herself. They can't even give me a chance to play with them or tell them about my day at school. All they care about is their phone and laptop and their so-called work. They don't even ask me how my day was. They just don't care. Sophia felt like she was living in a prison, with no one to talk to or play with. She longed for the love and attention of her parents, but it seemed like they were too busy to care. One fateful day, Sophia went to school, and after school was dismissed, she saw some of her friends being picked up by their parents. Some of them boarded the school bus, while others walked home with their friends. Sophia, as usual, trekked home alone. As she walked, she came across a group of people advertising milk. They were dancing and singing along to music, and Sophia couldn't help but stop and watch. She was mesmerized by their energy and enthusiasm. Before she knew it, the group had packed up their things and was moving along with their music, dancing and advertising their milk. Sophia, being a shy and curious child, followed them, dancing along to the music. As they moved along, Sophia found herself surrounded by street children who were also following the group. She felt a sense of excitement and freedom, dancing and laughing along with the others, but as they turned a corner, Sophia suddenly realized that she was lost. She didn't recognize the surroundings, and she had no idea how to get back home. She looked around frantically, but the group had moved on, and she was left standing alone. Sophia's excitement and joy quickly turned to fear and anxiety. She felt a lump form in her throat as she realized the gravity of her situation. She was lost, alone, and scared. Tears began to stream down Sophia's face as she broke down in sobs. She had never felt so scared and alone in her life. She didn't know what to do or where to go. All she could do was stand there, crying and feeling helpless. Sophia sat alone on the park bench, shedding tears and feeling scared and abandoned. Everyone who walked by seemed to ignore her, too afraid to approach the little girl in the school uniform who was crying uncontrollably. People would glance at her with suspicion and quickly look away, whispering to each other as they hurried past. Sophia felt like a ghost, invisible and insignificant. Just when she thought things couldn't get any worse, a madman appeared out of nowhere. He was dirty and disheveled, with wild eyes that seemed to bore into Sophia's soul. The madman approached Sophia, his voice gruff and menacing. "Little girl, what are you doing here?" he asked, his eyes glinting with a sinister light. Sophia was terrified. She tried to run, but the madman was too quick. He grabbed her arm, holding her tight as she struggled to break free. "Who are you?" the madman asked, his voice dripping with malice. "Do you need any help?" Sophia was too scared to speak. She tried to shake her head, but the madman just laughed, a harsh, menacing sound that sent shivers down Sophia's spine. The madman dragged Sophia to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. It was a dirty, run-down place, with broken windows and a crumbling roof. The madman pushed Sophia inside, locking the door behind her. Sophia was trapped, alone and scared, with no way to escape, as the madman loomed over her. Sophia realized that she was in grave danger. She was at the mercy of a madman, with no one to save her. The madman's laughter echoed through the abandoned building, sending chills down Sophia's spine. He started making strange, guttural noises, and Sophia's fear turned to terror. The madman began to touch Sophia, playing with her hair and clothes. Sophia tried to push him away, but he was too strong. She was trapped, and the madman's actions were making her feel sick to her stomach. Sophia prayed in her heart, asking God to save her from this nightmare. She cried and shed tears, begging for someone to come and rescue her. Just when Sophia thought things couldn't get any worse, the madman pulled out a piece of stale bread and a container of dirty water. He offered them to Sophia, telling her to eat. At first, Sophia refused. She was too scared and too proud to eat the madman's disgusting offering. But as the hours passed, Sophia's hunger began to gnaw at her. She was starving, and the bread and water were the only things available. When the madman left the building, Sophia reluctantly picked up the bread and water. She soaked the bread in the dirty water and began to eat, tears streaming down her face. As she ate, Sophia cried and asked God why she had followed the group of people. Why had she been so careless and naive? She was just a little girl, and she didn't deserve to be treated like this. Sophia's tears fell onto the bread, mixing with the dirty water. She ate and cried, her heart heavy with sorrow and fear. She was trapped, alone and scared, with no one to save her. Back home, David and Victoria, Sophia's parents, returned home from work late at night, thinking that Sophia was already asleep. They went to the kitchen, had their dinner, and went to bed, unaware that their daughter was in the hands of a madman. The next morning, they woke up, thinking that Sophia was still sleeping. They prepared for work and left the house early, without checking on their child. When they came back in the evening, they called out for Sophia, but she was nowhere to be found. They shouted and called out her name, but there was no response. They were so surprised and started asking themselves what could have happened to Sophia. "Hasn't she come back from school today?" Victoria asked. Her voice filled with worry. David tried to reassure her, but he was also getting anxious. "Maybe she went out to play," Victoria said, trying to convince herself that everything was okay. But as the hours passed, and Sophia didn't return, they started to get really worried. They stayed up till 9 p.m., but there was no sign of Sophia. They decided to ask their neighbors if they had seen Sophia, but the neighbors told them that they hadn't seen her for the past 2 days. Victoria broke down in tears, asking, "Where could our daughter be?" David tried to comfort her, but he was also filled with worry and fear for their daughter's safety. The next day, Sophia's parents, David and Victoria, went to her school to ask her teacher if Sophia had been in school the previous day. They were surprised when the teacher told them that Sophia had not been in school for the past 2 days. "I was even thinking of coming to check on her when school dismissed today," the teacher said, looking at David and Victoria with concern. "I wanted to make sure she's feeling fine." David and Victoria were taken aback by the teacher's words. They had no idea that Sophia had not been in school for 2 days. They looked at each other, feeling ashamed and guilty. The teacher looked at them with a mixture of confusion and disappointment. "Didn't you know that she hasn't been in school for 2 days?" she asked. "Where is Sophia? Is she okay?" David and Victoria quickly tried to cover up their mistake. "Everything is fine," they said. "We just wanted to check on our daughter to make sure she's in school," but the teacher was not convinced. She looked at them with a skeptical eye, wondering what kind of parents they were. "It's strange that you didn't know she hadn't been in school for 2 days, she said. David and Victoria left the school, feeling ashamed and embarrassed. They knew they had failed as parents, and they didn't know how to face the teacher or their daughter. They walked away from the school, their heads hung low in shame. David and Victoria returned home, feeling ashamed and guilty about their failure as parents. They sat down in their living room, and Victoria burst into tears. "Oh, if only we had taken care of our daughter, something like this wouldn't have happened," Victoria sobbed. "Who knows where she could be now? If she's in the hands of kidnappers, or if she's with someone who might harm her. I have failed my duty as a mother to take care of my child." David sat beside her, his face filled with shock and regret. "We should have been more careful," he said. "We should have made sure she was safe." Victoria continued to cry and sob, praying in her mind for God to give her another chance to see her daughter again. "Please, God, give me another opportunity," she prayed. "I promise to take good care of her, to be a better mother." David interrupted her, his voice filled with worry. "What if she's been kidnapped?" he asked. "What if they're demanding a ransom?" "We have to do something, we have to find her," Victoria nodded, still crying. "Let's pray that it's just kidnappers," she said. "Let's pray that they just want money, and that we can pay it and get her back. Please, God, just let her be safe." As they sat there, crying and praying, they both knew that they had failed their daughter. They had been so caught up in their own lives, their own work and worries, that they had neglected their child. And now, she was gone. They sat there for hours, crying and praying, hoping against hope that their daughter would come home safely. Sophia lived with the madman for a month now. Every morning, he would go out to beg for food, and Sophia would wait anxiously for his return. She was grateful for the madman's care, despite his mental state. One day, as Sophia sat in the dirty house, she began to think about her parents. "Why didn't they come looking for me?" she wondered. "Don't they care about me?" Sophia wished that the madman was not sane, so she could ask him to take her back home. But the madman just laughed at her whenever she tried to talk to him. Despite his mental state, the madman seemed to care about Sophia's safety and well-being. He made sure she had food to eat, and he never let her leave the house alone. As Sophia looked at herself, she realized that she was starting to look like the madman's daughter. She was dirty, and her clothes were tattered. She cried, thinking about how far she had fallen. "Oh God, please make a way for me to go back to my parents," Sophia prayed. "I know they were stingy and uncaring, but at least they are my parents. Please, God, help me." Sophia's parents, David and Victoria, were frantic with worry. They had been searching for Sophia everywhere, but she was nowhere to be found. They reported her missing to the police and searched all the streets nearby their house, but there was no sign of Sophia. Victoria carried a picture of Sophia with her, showing it to people and asking if they had seen her. But every lead ended in disappointment, and Sophia remained missing. Every day, David and Victoria would search for Sophia, scouring the streets and asking people if they had seen her. But every day, they would return home with a negative result. Victoria would cry uncontrollably, praying and asking God to give her a second chance. "I promise to take care of her properly this time," she would say, her voice shaking with sobs. "I will never neglect her again. Please, God, just bring her back to me." David would try to comfort her, but he was also filled with regret and worry. They had been so caught up in their own lives that they had neglected their daughter, and now she was gone. As the days turned into weeks, David and Victoria's hope began to dwindle. But they refused to give up, and they continued to search for Sophia, praying that she would be found safe and sound. As 2 months passed, Sophia found herself trapped and unable to find a way back to her parents' house. Meanwhile, her parents were frantically searching for her, but to no avail. One fateful night, Sophia's life took a devastating turn. The madman, who had been taking care of her, began to touch her inappropriately. Sophia was horrified and tried to push him away, but he overpowered her. She shouted and screamed for help, but her cries fell on deaf ears. The madman took advantage of her vulnerability and raped her, breaking her virginity. Sophia was consumed by pain, shame, and trauma. She cried out loud, her body shaking uncontrollably. The madman, realizing what he had done, tried to comfort Sophia, but she pushed him away. That night, Sophia's world was shattered. She sobbed uncontrollably until the break of dawn. As soon as the sun rose, Sophia ran out of the madman's dirty house, determined to escape the horror she had endured. Sophia ran out of the madman's dirty house, determined to find her way back home. She roamed the streets, checking every house, hoping to recognize their house again. As she walked, she cried and shed tears, her heart heavy with pain and trauma. Just as she was about to give up hope, something miraculous happened. Sophia stumbled upon her school teacher, who was on her way to school that morning. The teacher was shocked to see Sophia, and her eyes widened in horror as she took in Sophia's dirty and tattered appearance. The teacher rushed to Sophia's side, embracing her warmly. "Sophia, what happened to you?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. Sophia broke down in tears, telling her teacher everything: how she had lost her way 2 months ago, how she had been living with the madman, and how he had raped her the night before. The teacher was shocked and devastated by Sophia's story. She cried bitterly, holding Sophia tightly. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," she said. "I'm so sorry that this happened to you. You're safe now. I'll take you home to your parents." Sophia's school teacher took her home that morning, and Sophia's mother, Victoria, who had lost hope of ever seeing her daughter again, was shocked to see them. She ran to Sophia and embraced her tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. Sophia's father, David, was also overjoyed to see his daughter, and he hugged her tightly, tears in his eyes. They both looked at Sophia and saw how dirty and disheveled she was, and they noticed the bloodstains on her clothes. "What happened to you, Sophia?" Victoria asked, her voice shaking with worry, but the teacher intervened, saying, "This is not the right time for questions. What Sophia needs now is a bath, food, and rest." David and Victoria nodded in agreement and took Sophia inside. Victoria boiled water for Sophia to take a bath, and David prepared food for her to eat. Sophia took a deep sleep after eating, exhausted from her ordeal. Victoria was thankful to have her daughter back, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. She kept wondering about the bloodstains on Sophia's clothes and whether she had been hurt or worse. David also had the same concerns, and they both looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. They decided to wait until Sophia woke up and was feeling better before asking her what had happened. A few hours later, Sophia woke up from her sleep, crying uncontrollably in her bedroom. Her parents, David and Victoria, rushed in to comfort her. Sophia looked at them with tears in her eyes and began to speak. "You call yourselves my parents, but how did you take care of me?" Sophia asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "If you had taken good care of me, all these things wouldn't have happened to me. Now, I've lost my virginity to a madman, not even to a responsible person." Sophia's parents looked at each other, unsure of what to say. They had never expected Sophia to speak to them like this. "What happened, Sophia?" Victoria asked gently. "How did you get lost?" But Sophia was not interested in talking about that. "To hell with you and your questions," she shouted. "I told you before that I wasn't comfortable coming home alone from school, but you both ignored me. I regret the day I was born to you both as my parents." David and Victoria were shocked by Sophia's words. They had never seen her so angry and hurt before. They looked at each other, tears in their eyes, and knew that they had failed their daughter. "The madman took care of me better than you both," Sophia said. "At least he fed me and gave me a place to sleep. But you only cared about making money. Who were you going to spend it on if not me? I didn't even get to enjoy my childhood as a child from a rich family." Sophia's parents broke down in tears, crying uncontrollably. They knew that they had failed their daughter, and they didn't know how to make it right. Sophia's parents, David and Victoria, started apologizing to her, telling her that they knew they had failed her as parents. They promised to take care of her, provide for her, and get her a personal driver to take her to school and bring her back home. Sophia looked at them with concern on her face. "Now you want to correct your mistake?" she asked. "Now that my pride has been taken away from me at the age of 12? I'm no longer a virgin. What other security What other guidelines are you going to give me? I'm used to trekking to school and coming back home, Sophia continued. The next thing that will happen to me is for me to die, and both of you will lose me, her parents started saying. God forbid that nothing will happen to you again, with tears in their eyes. They promised to lavish their money on her and give her the best training, realizing too late that they had been depriving her of a happy childhood. Both David and Victoria broke down in tears, crying uncontrollably. Sophia was still very angry with them, and her parents knew they had a long way to go to regain her trust. 3 weeks after Sophia returned home, she started feeling dizzy and weak. Her parents, David and Victoria, rushed her to the hospital, determined to provide her with the best care possible. To their greatest surprise, the doctor informed them that Sophia was 3 weeks pregnant. Sophia's mother was shocked and cried out in dismay, "My daughter is not going to give birth to a madman's child." Victoria exclaimed. "Over my dead body will she ever give birth to that child. We're going to terminate the pregnancy." Sophia's father, David, was more cautious. "We should just leave the pregnancy alone," he said. "Terminating it might harm our daughter," but Victoria was adamant. "I cannot carry a grandchild from a madman's blood," she said. "Such a thing will never happen." After a heated argument, they decided to go ahead with the termination of Sophia's pregnancy. But during the procedure, Sophia's health took a turn for the worse. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Sophia gave up the ghost. She lost her life, leaving her parents consumed by grief and regret. Sophia's parents returned home that day, consumed by grief and regret. They cried bitterly, wishing they had never terminated the pregnancy. Sophia's father, David, was furious with Victoria. "You're the worst mother ever," he shouted. "You couldn't even take care of your own daughter. You were so obsessed with not carrying a grandchild from a madman's blood, but now you've lost your own daughter." Victoria cried uncontrollably, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. "I was wrong, I was so wrong," she sobbed. David's anger boiled over, and he yelled at Victoria, "You should have listened to me. We should have left the pregnancy alone." Victoria, unable to bear David's anger, shouted back at him. "You're blaming me? We both agreed to terminate the pregnancy." The argument escalated until David stormed out of the house, leaving Victoria alone in her grief. Victoria collapsed to the ground, crying and wailing in despair. "Oh, Sophia, my dear daughter, why did I have to lose you? I regret the day I decided to terminate your pregnancy. I was so blind, so selfish. Now you're gone, and I'm left with nothing but regret." As Victoria lay on the ground, she realized that she had learned a painful lesson. "There's nothing more important than your child," she whispered to herself. "They should be your first priority in life. I was so wrong to prioritize my own desires over Sophia's well-being." Victoria's cries echoed through the empty house, a haunting reminder of her loss and regret.